So the New Mutants, I know what people are saying. Argent, why did you go see this piece of shit? What even is this movie? And that's a very good question. And because I respect all of your time and I don't want to spend the next, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes rambling about something I have no concept of, I tried to do some research. I have no idea what the fuck this is. Like, is this part of the old X-Men continuity? Is this a new X-Men continuity? Is this like a reboot? Is this part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is this like part of Deadpool? Is Deadpool even part of the like X-Men continuity? I don't even know. The development history of this movie is a disaster. I think they started making it before the license went to Disney, and then Disney bought Marvel, and then Disney bought 20th Century Fox. So you just have this really bizarre development history of properties switching back and forth. And the director didn't even really kind of want to make a normal superhero movie. And this isn't a superhero movie, it's a horror movie. And that adds like another degree of just kind of randomness to this. So I don't know like when this is even supposed to take place. Because it kind of would make sense if this took place after Logan. Because all the mutants were wiped out after Logan, but there was still like a couple mutants left that were being raised in like a facility or something. So this would kind of make chronological sense, but then they refer to the X-Men being like an active thing. So, I mean, if the X-Men are active, does this mean this is taking place during like the original timeline where like X-Men United and X-Men Last Stand? Does it take place during the first reboot when you have like X-Men First Class and like X-Men Age of Apocalypse? I don't really know. I don't know if anybody really knows when this takes place, but that actually kind of works for the purpose of this movie. So how bad is this? Like, what is this even? Is this a superhero movie? Is it a horror movie? None of the advertising makes any sense. The casting choices make no sense. And I haven't seen anybody saying this movie was, like, good. I've seen a couple people saying, okay, guys, you're being too hard. This movie's mediocre. Or this movie's, like, shitty, but it's not more shitty than, like, some of the other recent X-Men movies or some of, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. And those are probably fair points to make. And even like the lesbianism in this film hasn't been able to get it a favorable showing. I think people complained about that actually and said that it was like not progressive enough. But I mean, I guess that's like all just kind of peripheral. You're not really here to hear me talk about what other people think. You're here to see what my hot take is. My X-gene take. My mutated take on this bizarre chimera of a film. What did I think of the New Mutants? Honestly, I kind of sort of liked it. I know people are going to think I'm trolling. Whenever I kind of like a weird movie like this, people think it's like a troll. Like when I reviewed Cannibal Holocaust and I said I actually thought it was a really good movie, beyond just being a gory exploitation film. I think some people thought that was a troll. But I kind of like this movie. It's not good, but it's interesting. It's bad in... It's weird because when you're dealing with like horror movies or surrealist movies or just stuff like this that are kind of supposed to be psychological mind screws, bad directing and bad acting and bad editing can actually kind of make it better because it makes it more incoherent. And if your movie's supposed to have like a surreal, dreamlike nightmare quality to it, then fucking it up can sometimes mean fucking it right, I guess. What would be the opposite of fucking it out? Fucking it up? Fucking it in? I don't know, but I kind of feel that's what happened with this film. Is it really does feel like a nightmare. And I don't mean that like metaphorically. I mean like this is like actually what a nightmare feels like, where there's like a setting that's kind of like isolated from the outside. Because in a dream, it's always because your like full brain isn't on, you're always in a very isolated place. Like it's just what's immediately around you. You don't really realize that you're in a wider world or that kind of thing. And any kind of thoughts you have about the wider world are just kind of in your head to begin with because of the nature of the dream. So, like, it takes place in, well, I guess we'll get into the plot in a bit, but like, okay, so you have that and the lack of an out, and so that's kind of part of it. Two, you'll have kind of a vague series of events and kind of a vague concept of cause and effect, where like things don't always seem to really take place in the order they should be taking place in. You're not really sure what's like happening and what's not happening. It's very hard to get kind of how a dream actually functions down, just because it's hard. I'm trying to describe it, but just the weird illogical yet logical flow, the shifting from one thing to another, just strange stuff happening, things appearing and disappearing, like there's all that stuff. And this movie, probably better than just about any other I've ever seen, manages to simulate that. It feels like an actual dream or an actual nightmare. And whether that was deliberate or the director just was trying to make a horror movie and he just really screwed up, and that was just kind of the end result of what he was trying to do, I don't know, but it actually kind of works. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I actually enjoyed this movie. I know this is going to make some people scream at their computer screen, but I actually like this more than I like Tenet. I could follow this movie easier than I could follow Tenet. I don't know. I just like this is a visually cinematography like interesting film. So let's talk about the New Mutants. Like, what the hell even is this thing? So our main character is Danny, or as Jon Snow would say, Donnie. So she's a Cheyenne Amerindian. So it starts off with her and her father being chased by something, which they claim is a tornado, but we don't really know yet. And her father dies, and then she passes out like from freaking out, and she wakes up in a mental hospital. And I kind of like that. I kind of like how they don't show really the outside world at all. Like, you just have this very brief glimpse from the reservation, and then she wakes up in this like hospital, and it turns out later that the hospital isn't necessarily like real or part of the real world, because there's like a barrier that surrounds it. And it's not very clear until like the end. Are they in like a simulation? Are they in an actual location? Are they in a pocket dimension? Like, I don't really know, but I kind of like that they don't show anything outside of it, or they have virtually no kind of contact with the outside world. So, I mean, that's good. So she wakes up there, and then she meets Dr. Reyes, who's played by a rather attractive Brazilian actress. And she tells her that she's at a facility for New Mutants. And it kind of is like a weird combination of like X-Men meets Glass. It's very similar to Glass meets Silent Hill, which is weird, but kind of works in a strange way. So there's some other mutants. There's like some Russian thought. There's a Brazilian Chad. There's Macy Williams, who's a lesbian Catholic Scottish girl who was beaten by a cardinal. I don't even, we'll talk about that. I don't even know how that works. And then there's some like American coal miner guy from Kentucky. So which pretty so she claims that they're there to learn how to control their powers And once they've completed the program there, they're going to be allowed to go and join the X-Men. So pretty quickly you discover that everybody here has a really dark past. Macy Williams' case, her power is pretty clearly that she can turn into a wolf, and that she can kind of go in between like being a human and a wolf kind of halfway. And like her dark backstory is when she discovered she had the power, she went to like the local reverend, who happens to be a cardinal. I don't know how many people's local reverends are a cardinal, but she goes to him and she's like, look, I need you to exorcise this out of me because I'm obviously possessed by a demon. So she shows him the transformation, then he proceeds to try to kill her, calling her a witch, and brands her with a cattle iron that has a W on it. I don't really know, like, apparently she's from Scotland and not like the middle of Africa. I kind of feel in a world where like mutation is well known to exist, like the Catholic Church considering like they welcomed like Nightcrawler with open arms. I think he was even ordained as a priest. Like they wouldn't tell their people to look out for it, because even now it's like the general reaction when somebody comes forward and they claim they have possession is to assume the person probably has some sort of mental illness. It's to try to like, first they try to send them to like a psychiatrist and see, and it's kind of like a last resort. It's generally assumed that something isn't supernatural unless there's overwhelming evidence. So unless like this is in Scotland, like I don't know, this is like a first world country. I mean, if you can call Scotland that. So like I guess like in this world, the Catholic Church doesn't acknowledge the existence of mutation, even though that mutation is a natural phenomenon and not a spiritual one. So I actually don't even get it. Doesn't make any sense. I feel like if anything, the church would extend like a welcoming hand to people who are kind of suffering from these difficulties and try to provide them with guidance from Christ. Because at the end of the day, they're still humans and they're still baptized and are brothers in Christ. But whatever. So that's her backstory. The Russian girl, I think it's implied, was a child prostitute who was fucked by a bunch of slender men with like happy faces. Don't ask. There's a Brazilian guy, the Brazilian Chad, is like, I'm a virgin. I've tried to have sex a bunch of times, but I just get I get too hot. So you think he's making like a premature ejaculation joke, but when he gets aroused, his fire powers turn on and he burned his girlfriend to death. So there's that. There's the coal miner guy who has a really weird power where he turns into like a ball, or like he becomes like glows with kinetic force and like flies at things. And he had it went off when he was working in a coal mine, and he killed his father and his entire crew. So they all basically have just come from like really troubled backgrounds. I think that Macy's character killed the Reverend who beat her to death and branded her. I haven't even heard of such a thing. I mean, this takes place in the modern era. This doesn't even take place like during the English Civil War or the Witchfinder General thing. Apparently, though, the guy who made this movie was raised as an evangelical Christian, and his parents told him that demons were real. And there's like, so we have them. Then there's some nonsense about like Donnie, that like there's some story, Native American story, that like there's the two bears in you, the good bear and the bad bear, and the one that wins is the one you feed more. And so her like fear is like being eaten by a giant demon bear, which admittedly sounds pretty metal, and when it shows up later is pretty cool actually. So the doctor's like, look, you're all here to try to like learn to control your powers, since you're all like fuck ups who killed multiple people. So Donnie initially wants to like kill herself, but then Macy, I'm not even gonna Rain, I guess her character is. I mean, I guess that's a good thing in this movie, is there's a character named Rain. Rain, you want to come over here, girl? Okay. Well, she doesn't. She apparently is not a fan of the New Mutants. So they start bonding because like Rain's the only one who's there who's not a complete. I guess the American guy's not bad. Who's kind of friendly to her. So they proceed to like go through various therapies. They the Russian thought spikes the drink of the doctor. The doctor is it's pretty early on established is a mutant who can make barriers, and she has the barrier around the mental asylum. Um, so sorry, it's just like it's kind of hard to like follow what even happened in this movie. So they hang out, they do like lie detector. We get to hear more and more of about their past. Um, and then the various people start to kind of have like horrific hallucinations and stuff. Like the Slender Man with the smiley faces start attacking the Russian thought. The one guy has a hallucination that he's going to have sex with the Russian thought, but then she turns into his girlfriend on fire and tries to eat him. The other guy has like vivid hallucinations of the coal mine, his father trying to kill him in the coal mine. So everyone's just being exposed to this stuff. And Macy and the main girl go outside and they look up at the rain falling onto the barrier, and then they engage in an incredibly awkward kiss. And that's kind of the thing I really hate, is this whole like gaslighting that if you have a close friend who's a member of your gender, it means you're a homosexual. And I mean, like, it's so goofy and it's so lame. I might do a video about gender politics in Persona 4, but it's like, oh, okay, so you have Donnie who's like there, and she meets a girl who's nice to her, so that immediately means that they're like lesbians, I guess. I don't know. I mean, you know how I am about this whole thing and how I'm like one of the most hard liners on it. And I can't be too specific because this is YouTube. But in contrast to kind of the alternative form of this, lesbianism is just really goofy. It's just like, it's just lame. It's just, I don't really know. It's just kind of roll my eyes at it. It's just like it's just like a dumb phase girls do, I guess. But, I'm not sure if it's even really possible to spread AIDS. I guess it might be. I don't know. I don't really feel like looking it up. But yeah, so they're lovers now, for reasons, because we got to make this movie modern and edgy for all the teens. So then a bunch of stuff happens. A Russian thought tries to kill Donnie because she figured out what her power is, and we still don't know what Donnie's power is. And we're still kind of wondering, like, people are seeing all this, like, weird Silent Hill shit, and it's like, does it have to do with Donnie? Is it because of, like, that they're in, like, purgatory or something? Is there, like, drugs in the water or something? Is it, like, high life? I don't really know. But the doctor receives instructions from, I forget what it's even called, from some company, the Essex Corporation, that Donnie needs to be terminated, and that her power is she's able to bring to life people's greatest fears. So the doctor talks about how she's going to put her down like a dog. It's like a reference to something earlier. And she decides to like tell the person who has the ability to create like real, they aren't illusions if they're real, to make people's worst fears real. She decides to like give like a monologue to her about how she's going to kill her before she does it, instead of just sedating her and then killing her and just getting it out of the way. She's like, no, I'm going to like scare her and get her like terrified, so when she passes out and loses control of her powers, then it's going to unleash it. So when she goes out, you start getting like a huge number of the Slendermen show up. Stuff like that. Eventually the demon bear shows up. So Rain goes and cuts up the doctor and saves her. And then the doctor tries to kill Donnie again, but fails because the demon bear shows up and eats her. And then we kind of get like a scene of all the various mutants kind of accepting their powers and trying to save Donnie from the demon bear that she summoned. And then eventually she's able to wake up and put the demon bear away. And now that the doctor's dead, they can leave the mental institution and go on to like wherever they are. I was a little disappointed that it was a real location and that it wasn't just like some sort of like government facility like Cube or like a pocket dimension or like the holodeck from Star Trek and they're on yesterday's Enterprise. I mean, that stuff all would have been cool, but that's really like not what ultimately happened. So what can be said of New Mutants? I actually kind of like it. It's not a good movie. It's kind of a mess of a movie. It's a disaster of a movie. But that actually kind of works. It's a bit like with Dark Souls 2, which I also like and a lot of people don't like. Dark Souls 2 is a mess. But when you're going for a game that's supposed to be like surreal and dreamlike and about the like unreliable narrators and like the inconsistencies of reality and not really knowing what's there and what isn't, it actually is fairly effective at doing that. So not a good movie, not a competently made movie, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Tenet. So I hope people found the review interesting. I probably wouldn't recommend going to see this. It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. So